individual councillors could be making audio or video recordings of this meeting. The council's recordings will be uploaded to a cloud-based website of record and will be available indefinitely to the general public. By participating at the meeting, including by merely logging into it, you consent to this. If you do not consent to these terms, you should please not log in to the meeting. Chair.
Thanks, John. Okay, item 1, apologies for absence. John, have we got any?
Chair.
Yes.
Sorry,
Steve.
can I start with a point of order?
Of course you can.
I'd just like to question whether the meeting's been properly called, because I only say this because I want to make sure that we don't get, that somebody doesn't cry foul later. But the papers I have, unless I've missed something, and apologies if I have, I've got papers that say Tuesday the 13th of April, and the same on the website is the meeting on the website has been called for the 13th of April. I can't see anything that has publicised a meeting tonight.
Well, I can't talk about the publicity, but we've certainly received them. John, have you pinned up the agenda for tonight?
Yes, certainly have.
Put it on the website.
I initially, when we had the advice, I put a postponed sticker over the previous agenda on both notice boards, then removed, and then when we looked to and agreed the new date, then that went on the notice boards also.
I looked at the because I could not find papers, an agenda saying 22nd of April. So I went to the website, and if I go to the website, it still says F&GP agenda 13th of April.
Well, I've got an agenda here, so I can't speak because I haven't looked on the website. So
you have an agenda that says the 22nd of April?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yes.
Because I don't seem to have that. Apologies if I've missed something.
Paul.
Well, just to say, yes, I've got one that's dated the 22nd, and there's been some correspondence about this, as most councillors would have seen. But I did have an email from a member of the public today to say that they couldn't see anything about the meeting on the notice board. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that was what I was told. And when they looked, I don't know whether that was yesterday evening or this morning, I don't know. But perhaps John could clarify when it was put on the notice board.
I think I put it up on Friday of... Yes, 16th. 16th of April.
Okay.
Went on both notice boards.
Okay, so the member of the public's wrong.
Okay. And it was on the website, presumably.
And I did that myself, so I know for absolute certainty. And it was redistributed on the 16th.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the website now, sorry.
And it's 11:03 on the 16th that I distributed to all councillors.
The main thing is that it's up on the notice boards. Is that right?
Yeah.
And sorry, can we just be absolutely clear that it went up on a day that we were told was a DA's non, that things cannot be done during that period?
It went up on through you, Chair, for me. It went up on a D's non, a day when we were within the public mourning. However, we did need to get a message out. We needed to get agendas up in advance of the meeting, and as per the advice that was sought and given, because the original summons went out on the 8th, there were in fact 4 clear days before we are convening this meeting, and we were able to redistribute an updated agenda because of that.
Okay, sorry, Chair. Oh, sorry, Paul. I think you had.
Yeah, sorry, Steve. It was just to say, well, the one that was published on the 8th specified the 13th of April as the date of the meeting. So that's what confuses me. So that one doesn't give valid notice of the meeting. And the second one was put up on a DA's non, and therefore, as far as I see, hasn't given, again, the 3 clear days notice. But we've had correspondence about this, and John, you seem to be confident that I'm mistaken.
I am very confident. Not necessarily wanting to say that you're mistaken, but I'm very confident that this is a lawfully convened meeting. We sent out the original summons on the 8th. We have, in actual fact, given 4 clear days notice. That was the 9th and the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week, because all we had to do was give notice of the postponed date rather than a new summons for a new meeting, because it wasn't a new meeting, it's a postponed meeting. And within the advice that we were given on the day that I informed everyone, it gave examples as to how this could work. So yes, we're absolutely fine to convene this meeting, in my opinion.
Okay.
Chair, just to say, Chair, if I may. Okay, I've found the 22nd agenda. For some reason it's coming up, but it's telling me that my email is telling me there wasn't an attachment to it, but there is. So I have that, but I will say that I look at the website right now, and I can just see an agenda for the 13th, but I've made my point of order. So if you're happy, I'll go with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just looked on the website too, John, and it's the 13th of April. I can't see one for the 22nd.
Okay. Well,
the main thing is
we definitely put it on notice boards. That
as long as it's gone on the notice boards is the main thing.
Definitely did it myself.
Okay. All right. Okay. In that case, we'll move on. Any declarations of interest?
Sorry, Chair.
Yes.
Just one apology from Councillor Alexander before we move on to declaration.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, can we just be clear that it's not a matter of apology from Councillor Alexander. Councillor Alexander is prohibited from attending these meetings.
Paul, I understand. I'm sorry to cut across you. I understand, but we don't want any more vilification of Councillor Alexander. He's absented himself from these committees, and therefore he's entitled to give an apology. So he is given an apology.
He's been banned though, hasn't he, Tim?
He has, no, he hasn't been banned.
I've been banned. I've been banned, haven't I? And I've done nothing wrong.
No, I'm not going to go into an argument. He resigned from. He didn't resign, rather. He absented himself from the committee, so he's given his apologies. But can we move on? Declarations of interest, please.
Sorry, I've got a hand up, Chair, from Joanna.
Joanna, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I thought there was an item on the agenda. I may have misread it. To the references Steyning Festival. Have I imagined that? Because yes. If there is, I just want to declare an interest at this point that I won't be participating in a debate to do with that.
Okay, thank you, Joanna. John, do we have anybody listening in? Because I can't see everybody on my small screen that has
2 members of the public, Tim. We've got 2
and members. Is there anybody who may want to speak on a subject? No.
If you've got any questions, turn your video on if you have, please.
Sorry, Tim, before we move on, I've got a hand up from Rodney still.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about questions from the floor. I'm talking about whether there's any subject we're going to be discussing, like Steyning in Blue or anything like that, anybody is here in the member of the public.
Don't believe so, no.
Okay, all right.
No, sorry,
Rodney, sorry.
No, it's all right. I'll give up. It's all right, don't worry.
Okay, right, then we'll move on then. Declarations of interest, John? None?
That one from Joanna, the item was 6:15, Joanna.
15. Okay. Thank you very much. Questions from the floor? Do we have any questions from the floor?
None received early, Chair. I don't see anyone. Hazel, don't know if you do.
No. Okay.
No.
In that case, we'll move on. Right, the minutes of the meeting. Let me just clear this. Right, the draft minutes of the 9th of February. Can I agree that, or can we agree that the draft minutes of the meeting held on 9th of February are a true and fair record? Can I have a proposer for that? Well, I'll propose that. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you. And all those in favour? Thank you very much.
That's unanimous.
Thank you. Right. Matters arising, John. Do you want to start this off, please?
Yes, certainly, Chair. I will. So I'll report on 3 of these items, with the rest either actioned or being discussed later in the meeting. So 5.2, monthly signatory requirements for finance and minutes to be progressed. Action ongoing is actually that we have sent out minutes to be signed. Still await just one coming back from a former chair. So pretty good response so far, I would say. And as you know, Tim, when you're able to come in and work closely with me regards the monthly finance reconciliations, then we'll be able to get on with that, but we can't.
Well, we can do that. No, we can do that as soon as we're allowed to. Yeah. Can I just urge anybody who hasn't signed these to do so as soon as they can, please, so that we can keep on top of it. Thank you very much. Okay, John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, 5.7. This is the liaison with HALC. I'll just start it. You might want to add. There's been a HALC EOM called 2 weeks ago, but that wasn't really the time to bring up this request, as it was to elect and agree new member positions. There is another meeting next week. I think you may be attending.
Yeah. Yes, I am, and I can bring up the graffiti item then.
Thank you very much, Chair. And then lastly from me, 5.13, Steyning Bloom formed as to new finance arrangements, as discussed last meeting. I initially phoned via phone conversation with committee member soon after the meeting in February.
Okay.
We'll write with further details soon.
Thank you, John. Rodney.
Sorry, regards to Steyning Bloom, I am a bit confused on that. So are we giving them a donation of £2,000?
Sorry, what are you confused about?
The Steyning Bloom.
Yeah.
So what's the new arrangement now, please?
Well, we're not. What we agreed was that we wouldn't do it under the old arrangement, where we went out and bought all the flowers and so on, and claimed back the VAT. So we were going to give them the net sum. I think that's right, John, isn't it?
Yes, agreed. May I just read out the agreed proposal, because it really does state it, Chair.
Okay.
So it was to give a grant to 2,000 to Steyning Bloom as a one-off payment for the year, which will be discussed again for next year, and that the donation from Steyning Bloom, which has been received in previous years, will not be accepted.
Right.
So it is a 2,000 donation.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I've got a query there then, because basically, we actually do pay for the flowers and the water, and we've been doing it for the last 2 or 3 years. About £4,000. I can't find it at the moment.
Yeah. Well, on a point of order, this was an item that was discussed last meeting.
Yeah.
It's actually minuted on the minutes we just approved. So all the information you're asking for is actually there in the minutes we just approved. We're just wasting time.
I don't think they are correct.
Well,
I'm just having a look. Of course, it must be on the amenities paperwork. But I think if you look at the overall budget for this year, the general one, it's about £4,500 that we actually budget, or we've given towards the budget for the water.
Well, I haven't got
the plants.
All right, I haven't got those budgets in front of me, so I'll come back to you on that one. That's a
Okay.
fair.
John's hands
question.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know, John.
Yes, sorry if I can help. Yes, Rodney, you're right in what we've done the last few years. But that was the point of what we agreed at the last meeting, that we would change the way that this was worked. And so it will be, clearly it will be less of a donation, but that we're giving, but we will be receiving less. So any reduced income will be made up with less expenditure to more or less the same amount. Anyway, this is, as Steve says, you know, this was agreed last meeting as per my previous statement. Further details we oughtn't to go into because, of course, it was discussed in confidential session last time.
Thank you,
Okay,
John. Well, I'll get back to you, Rodney,
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I think we're just
Okay.
creating ourselves extra work there.
No,
We've already.
I hope not. I hope it's the opposite. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I hope I've got the right numbering because I'm looking at the previous version of the agenda, but at 5.6 of my one, which I think is the same on both, and we've got clerk to convene FOI panel and review FOI case actioned. Can we just be told what the result of that was, please?
John?
Yes, we'll be reporting on that later this meeting, and item item 7.1, Paul.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Right, can we move on then to the approve the list of payments for February and March 2021? Has everybody got those in front of them? And does anybody want to raise any questions? John, have you got any that you particularly want to highlight?
Well, there is one that I wouldn't mind highlighting. Obviously, overall, I would say that because of lockdown, there's been less financial transactions over this 2-month period, as you probably noticed. Similar amount of expenditure items, even though maybe the content or amount is less than usual, but certainly less income, as you might imagine. But one item I will refer to is the on the March payment list, right at the bottom. I'm sure someone else would have mentioned it if I didn't. That's that we received a £1,000 donation.
Okay.
But we did receive it in error.
Right.
And therefore organised that the payment was taken back. It was a very swift organisation because we only received it on the 30th, and I didn't really want to carry over this error to the following year. So you'll see immediately after that, minus 1,000. That's the reason for those two transactions.
Okay. John, can you just explain why in the amount banked, then we've got a minus figure? Is that just purely the way that we do our accounting, in the sense that it was never out in the first place, so we sent it back?
Yeah, it's not a different line. I didn't want to include it as a different sort of expenditure or income line. If it goes in to one budget line and comes out on the same code, then it effectively cancels it out. But the joy of this system is that you don't necessarily just see the end result, which is effectively zero, because we are given payment lists so that you can see all of these things just to be doubly certain.
Oh, I see.
We therefore see 1,000 and then a minus figure of 1,000.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's on page 1 at the bottom as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, understand that now. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions? Paul?
Well, can we just have some clarification about this mistaken donation? It seems really odd for somebody to make a donation and then say it was an error. Did they change their mind, or just, I mean, who was it?
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily go into the details of the individual, but when we received it on the bank statement, because it was getting towards the end of the financial year, then we were checking every day for the last few days just to see where we were. And a name came up against this donation. Didn't understand why we we were receiving 1,000. So we trawled through our emails, came up with who we thought it might be, got in touch via email, and in fact found out that they had sent it to us in error. It was going to another organisation. Again, I don't necessarily want to go into the details of that,
fine.
but that's it.
All
Okay.
right, I just thought we might have offended somebody so much they changed their mind, but that's great.
It's always
Thank you.
always that possibility.
We don't do that.
Okay, all right. Well, if nobody's got any other comments about that, then can I propose that we approve the list of payments for both February and March 2021? Can I have a seconder? Deborah, thank you. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you, John. To agree, the F&G, let me just get rid of these two. Okay, right. Next one, 6.2, to agree F&G income and expenditure reports for February and March 2021. John, do you want to just run us through quickly? Everybody's had them, but.
Yes, so these the final 2 calendar months of the year. I say calendar months because, of course, there is a month 13 that comes into play. This is when we deal with the accruals, and that's what we have started to discuss later on the agenda. So we can see very similar amounts, because, as I say, not a huge amount of income being generated, not that we see that under F&GP. There has been additional elements, obviously, in March, but really I'll throw it open to committee to ask any questions. Nothing that I was necessarily going to draw attention to that hasn't been mentioned already.
Okay. Anybody got any questions that they want to ask John? Otherwise, we'll move this on. Steve.
Mute is Steve.
Sorry about that. So presumably, I'm looking at the March report at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got donations received and excess there of 26,000. Am I right in assuming is that the grant, the grant to cover loss of income?
Correct.
Okay, so it's showing in here, but then the loss of income presumably will show on community, or is that correct?
Yes, if I may, through you, Chair. Yes, so of that amount, that's you're correct, Steve. 24,000 received from HDC on the various successful grant applications that we put through, and yes, it would come out in terms of less expenditure on the community, or really that's amenity and premises, and it would be under the premises portion of community.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Steve. Anybody else? Okay, well, in that case, can I propose, therefore, we agree the F&GP income expenditure reports for February and March. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Steve, thank you very much. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Thanks very much. Right, get rid of that. Get rid of that. Okay. John, then, do you want to do the report on the overall end of year?
Yes, Chair. Yes. Fine. So in relation to the one-page end of year finance figures, I just tried to summarise that all for you under item 6.3, supporting papers, just to give a little bit of narration. I've updated you on the bank balance as of 31st March 21. Very healthy position, I think. Hopefully you'll agree. I've also included the current net income over expenditure from the 2020-21 budget. That's 136,945 underspend, but obviously there's more to go. This figure calculated from total annual budget, which is 427,655, that being precept at 322,305, plus other income streams such as Steyning Centre room hire minus the year's expenditure. So far, that stands at total income 404,709 minus 267,764, which gives us figure 136,945, as I said. So that is net income over expenditure. I've also outlined current accrual figure at approximately 76,800, with invoice details still to be received. But it is that much because we're looking at the wardens, which is, as sure you realise, in the region of 42,000. We've got the swimming pool invoice due to come our way at over 15. We've got the audit and legal fees that have come in now. Last one today. That's going to be in the region of, well, I say last one, we've still got one legal fee from our solicitor. So it's going to be in the region of 6,000. We've got the play inspection, 1,000. We've got the concrete removal, which has been completed in the last few days. So now that we can put that invoice through, it's over 4. And we've got the last 3 backs payments. That was in the region of 10,000. So ultimately and altogether, that's going to be in the region of 76,800. And as I say, that becomes month 13 accruals. And then, as we look further, I've considered in more detail the proposed earmark reserve figure at 27,918. As I said, we're dealing with the that one next in some detail, and then that will leave approximately 32,000 underspend. That's 10% of the, or approximately 10% of the precept for last year. Again, all of this subject to final calculations, because you know there's plenty more invoices and what have you to come in.
Thank you, John. Now everybody got, I hope, the paper that John and I put together, because I don't know about everybody else, but I find the way that local authorities account for things is so much different from the way that we do it in business, or we did it in business. I thought it would be more helpful if we did it in that traditional way. It certainly makes it much easier to understand. So I hope everybody did actually find it much easier to understand, because it lays it out in a way that most of us should be familiar with. And that is the way, I hope, John, that we're going to present it each month. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as Tim rightly said, we had some discussion about this. I've basically presented as I've seen previously presented, but I'm more than willing to change and adapt, providing it's more understood by you guys, really. Yeah. And Tim's put forward in his briefing paper, I think, you know, a more than reasonable variation. And I've said already to Tim, yeah, I'm more than happy to present in future if that's the way we'd like to do it.
Well, what was interesting when I did it, and I put all the figures together and worked it out in the way that I expected to be shown, I was delighted to find that the figures actually came out correctly. So what John actually puts down is obviously correct, but it's the way it's put down is rather hard to understand. Okay, sorry, Steve.
So yeah, just to help me understand this then. So I think, am I right in thinking, because I do get confused about this month 13 thing. And yeah. I suspect what the issue here is the difference between actual cash and where the costs fall, which of course is different. So would I be right if you take, for example, in your accruals, you've got 42,000 for the wardens. Mm-hmm. So although that's an accrual cash-wise, as a cost, it actually belongs in the year just finished.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. I think that's fine. Yeah. That's sensible.
John, at the end of this month 13, then, will we produce a final figure like this? Yes? Yep. Okay. Just so that everybody can understand it then.
May I elaborate somewhat?
Yes, do.
somewhat on
Yeah,
that?
Rodney,
Yes.
I'll come back to you.
So what I effectively do when we get to a position when I believe all final accruals are in and we can completely close that month is present those figures in a list of accruals, which I have actually sent out to this committee in previous years, the final listing. So I put that together, send it to our Realtus software group, who then do their year end. Those year end figures, which effectively complete our month 13, put through accruals, then those figures go to the internal auditor, and then he does all the final checks. Those figures then become the governance and accountancy figures, you may recall, which is what then comes before this committee for final approval. So you see all of those details, and of course so do the members of the public, because we have to display those for a period of time. In fact, we choose to display them most of the year, frankly. So yeah, everyone gets to see all of these figures.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody got any other questions? Oh, sorry, Rodney, I meant to come back to you, sorry.
Okay. I don't agree with these most of these figures. I will go through them. The accruals, 76,800, includes £4,000 for the concrete repairs or the concrete removal. That's only £2,000, not 4,000. So on that basis, the total is 145,000. Now, with the earmark reserves, 27,000. To me, you look down all those figures, most of those figures, and there's only really two figures that could be classed as earmark reserves, and that is £5,000 for the neighbourhood plan, and then the LED lighting, which comes to 12,000 and something pound, £12,403. So then you've got the CIL funds, which is in earmark reserves. Well, that is money, that's income. That is nothing, that is income that we can spend. So that shouldn't be in the earmark reserves. So if you take that off, the total surplus for this year, I work it out at £54,776. Now, this current year's earmark reserve special projects, we've got on the budget, 11,550. So what I'm saying is that for this current year, I make it that we've got monies available of £66,326.
Well, I can't off the top of my head dispute those because it will take some time. But if we take just the SIL monies, as you know, have to be used for specific purposes, normally for infrastructure, and therefore they are earmarked in the sense that when we get the forms through, they specify what they're supposed to be used for. So that is an example. The others, as I say, we could sit here for another half an hour having to go through it all.
If I can just kind of go through it then, because see, the underspend HR services, we've got £5,000 allowed in this current year's budget. So what we've got there at 3,743 is really it's extra money. We haven't spent it.
No, correct. It is unspent, but it's
and then it goes for the notice boards. I know that's only £1,000,
Yeah.
But then you've got the MPF and the allotment access, £2,000. Well, you know, I mean, there is a muddle on that. See, and then you go to vintage years. We're showing that it's £1,238. Well, it's not that. Vintage years have virtually had their money, all bar 238. The other £1,000 is something that we've always put in the budget for any particular request we're getting. So because we haven't spent it in 2021, it's not really an earmark. So it should be coming. So it gives us more money to actually spend in this current year.
Okay. I think, I mean, you've raised some interesting points. Why don't you put those down for John in an email or in a memo, and then we can have a look at it, and then we can come back.
I'll have to send it to you, Tim, because you know I'm not allowed to send it.
Well, you send it to me. That's fine. Then I can have a look at it, discuss it with John, and then we can get back to the committee. It'll all come, and then we put it right if it needs to be put right for the next month or the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
But thanks for raising them anyway. Anybody else? Any questions, Paul?
Yeah, just to clarify this point of accruals, because I've struggled with this for the last 2 years. When we write accruals, as I understand it, what we actually mean is accrued debt, i.e. creditors. Is that right? I mean, I normally think of an accrual as something that is coming to me, but this is stuff that we are going to pay out.
Correct.
So they're accrued debts and they're creditors. So I understand that. I think my two main points are that we've been told all year that we've got this reduction in income and we're really struggling, etc. And now we find that we've underspent by 136,000 odd pounds. We've got, of that 136,000 pounds, we've got accrued debt stroke creditors 76,800, leaving something like 60 odd thousand pounds, of which we're only intending to earmark 27,000. So my big question is, what are we doing with the other 30 odd thousand, 32,000? Because, you know, we're here to provide services to the public, and it seems to me that when I look at the proposed earmark reserves, there's precious little actually that we're providing by way of service. And the other second point is Rodney's made a really good point, that in addition to all this money that we haven't spent last year, which is potentially available for earmarking, we've got the money that we've budgeted for in this year. We've got 11,500 odd pounds in the budget for projects this year. So that's also potentially earmarkable, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So we're saying we're proposing to earmark only 28,000 pounds, when in fact we've got at least 72,000 pounds available for earmarking. Well, it seems, isn't it?
Well, as we said, Paul, these are figures that we've got to, because Rodney has raised some points, as you say, and John will need to come back with his response to that. You've got to remember, we also got 24,000, is that right, John, for grants, which we hadn't expected to get. So when we were talking about the possibility of us having an overspend, the 24,000, of course, came in incredibly handy and has contributed to it. John, do you want to add any more to that?
Yeah, two things, really. Yes, at the end of the year and the beginning of this year, I was actually stating that there was a chance that we would be underspent by a small amount. So if you took away the 24,000 from the 32 and you take away the fact that, you know, less staffing figures, then we would be in the region of around 6,000 to 8,000 underspent, which was what I was actually projecting a few months back. That's number one. Either way, I'm happy, but what it does mean is it gives us, yes, a bit more flexibility and a bit more cash going into next year. I just wanted to refer to one of the points I think Paul was making when he was talking about projects for next year as being part of what was potentially earmarkable. We earmark these reserves from last year to this so that they can be in effect ring-fenced, as Tim will maybe discuss a little bit more in terms of his amended list. The project amount that we put together, we didn't specify because we hadn't agreed priorities at that point, Paul. We just agreed an amount. So yes, when it comes down to it, we will agree to the priorities, but it's slightly different from, you know, this list of earmarked figures, because this is what we, you know, move forward from last year to this current year in terms of what we hope to spend relating to projects. Does that help?
Paul?
Well, not hugely, I'm afraid, because I mean, my recollection is that going back to the budget working party meetings, we were all in agreement that we couldn't start talking about how we were going to earmark projects until we had some really clear figures about what was potentially available for earmarking. And the months have just gone past and we still haven't got that. I mean, this document here, one would expect to be the potentially earmarkable figures, because we're going to talk a bit later on about whether we're going to earmark some money for the Christmas decorations. I mean, this is why I didn't attend the 13th March Working Party meeting, because I said, if you haven't got the figures for what is potentially earmarkable, how on earth can we start agreeing our priorities? And yet here we are trying to agree our priorities when we haven't got the actual figures that are potentially earmarkable. And so, you know, I just feel very frustrated that the months are going past. We're trying to make decisions in the wrong order with with insufficient information, I'm afraid.
Well, we're not quite doing it in the wrong order. You've got to remember that we've had the pandemic has thrown everything into disarray. So we were at one point looking at the potential of a loss. Or an overspend, I should say. What it then turned out was that we were looking towards the autumn time as an underspend of about, as John said, about £6,000, and then we had these grants come in. So things have really turned upside down, and what we really do need to have is an accurate figure as to what we are going to be underspent, so that we can allocate them to projects if that's what we want to do. Now we've also got to build up our general reserves, as you know. So these are decisions which we've got to make in the next few weeks. But the fact is that the money is there and we can use it. So we now then have to decide on what projects that we put them to once we know the exact figure. Steve.
Thanks. Yeah, actually, you mentioned the fact that we need to build up the general reserves, but I was also going to say we're under no obligation. We're acting like we're panicking that we need to earmark something today. We're under no obligation whatsoever to earmark these funds today or next week or next month. You know, let's hope. I'm sure we will be able to apply them to the best use of the community, but it's not something that needs to be done today. And we seem to be talking around these things instead of moving on.
Yeah. No, as I say, well, I think it's an important point which was raised, and I think we've given it some consideration now. So, Paul, unless you're going to add anything to that, I'd like to move on.
If I could just very briefly respond to Steve. I mean, the point is that we have the Christmas decorations later on the agenda, and if we start picking things off, I mean, it seems to me we should be doing is deciding what the total funds are that can be earmarked, and then setting the priority of the various budgets, because we have this tension between, are we going to be able to afford the allotment water supply or not? Well, if we've blown it on a huge amount on the Christmas decorations without really knowing what our budget is, I mean, hopefully we can afford both. But unless we know that it's one or the other or both, I don't see that we can be making sensible decisions by picking individual items off as we go. We need a coherent overall view, A, of what's available, and B, how we want to prioritise the spending of it. That's my position. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. Okay, let's move on then. John, where are we now? You've done the finance figure, the earmark reserve. So I've given you the list which Rodney has questioned on item 6.4. In the explanation that I gave you, which was about the general reserve funds, the earmarked funds, and the ring fenced, I hope that was explanatory. Because I think that's the important thing. That's what over in the past we seem to have got a bit muddled with, and I thought it important and that we do it. Now Rodney's raised some points about whether these funds should be earmarked or whether they shouldn't be. So I would suggest that we move on from this. Rodney puts his paper together, send it to me, and I'll discuss that with John, and we'll come back to the committee and explain it all, and it can come up at the next meeting, because that will be the end of the year meeting. John, is that right? Okay, when we should then have a absolute clarity about what we can spend, and then we can allocate that to the various projects. John.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I've stated a few times, we are dealing with a few approximate figures here because we're not truly at end of year. However, what I didn't want to do was leave you without some indication as to where we might be heading in terms of the proposed earmark reserves. And then obviously we have the money put by for projects as per our new budget. So all of that money would be going towards projects for this year and would then need to be prioritised. Okay. And of course, as you rightly said, and as Steve said, this isn't, for us to necessarily agree all of this today. We could agree parts, or we just defer until we know all the more accurate information. Completely okay with that. At a slightly later date when we do have those end of year figures.
Well, I would be comfortable if we wait until we know exactly how much we have to spend. Right. Sorry, Paul, I'd like to move on.
Very briefly, Chair. If both you and Councillor Goldsmith are happy, can I suggest that you might talk on the phone rather than email? Because Rodney spoke to me about these things and he articulated it very, very well, and I understood exactly the points he was making, and it might be easier for everyone if he had a chat.
Fine, well, if he wants to give me a call, then fine. Okay. Rodney?
What I'll do, Tim, I'll email it to you and then phone you up afterwards. So
okay, all right, yeah, great.
Okay. And then, we can
absolutely fine.
I can say we can wheel and deal, but that's the wrong wording. But
all right, okay. John.
Well, may I make a suggestion that maybe the three of us, via Zoom, rather than taking on board information and then passing it on, might be better. The three of us discussing it just for speed. Okay.
All right. Well, we can have a chat about that. Yeah, and decide if that's the right way to do it. Yeah.
Rodney, are you okay with that?
Well, I mean, I was going to say you're obviously quite busy, John, and I mean, if Councillor Lloyd and myself talk first and get it all sorted out, then it's easier. I mean, it takes all the pressure off you.
Okay. Either way, don't mind.
Okay.
I'm.
All right. Okay. Let's move on. Thanks for that. Anyway, 6.5. Discuss and agree the recommendations from the recently convened budget working party. You've all had the paper with that. Right, now I've sent round, if we go on to that plan, on to the notes, the business plan, I did circulate a reduced version of it. Did everybody get it? I took out all the figures because it's the only plan that we had. So I took all the old budget figures and everything else out of it, and anything that was irrelevant as far as current accounts are concerned, and I just sent the outline, or I sent it out as a sort of a aid memoir, as a to everybody, so that they could sort of see what the original business plan was and what we might like to improve for the next, for the next 3 years. I'm not saying it was a perfect plan at all, but it was a 3-year plan, and it was the only one that we had at the time.
Yeah.
John, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure that everyone did receive that one, Tim. I think in the first instance, we were just going to look at the details, the finer details together before it went out, to avoid some of the obvious changes. So maybe if I say that, I'll double check that and distribute to everybody. This isn't a highest priority situation, but it's certainly something that I think I'd like in place for our sort of new year, as it were, with new councillors coming on board, part of the sort of new era, as it were. So certainly like to discuss this at next FNGP. So we'll get it out good and early for that one. Okay. Rod, were you going to say something?
Well, I was going to say I couldn't recollect receiving it.
Okay, well, no, some seemed to get it and some didn't. I sent it out twice, actually, so I don't quite know what happened there, but we'll go along with what John said, and we'll make sure that also goes out again.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
2, provision of laptops. You saw that. It looks as if we're going to be able to go live after I think it's the 6th of May, the current regulations finish. I may be a little bit wrong on the date, but it's around about the 6th. So we should be able then to go into live meetings. John.
One thing that we must stop, unless there's some other agreement very hastily put together, which I doubt, we need to stop virtual meetings. So then the next stage is what we're able to do in terms of live meetings, and it appears the first live meeting that we can get involved with would be the 17th of May currently, which is why that is the next one on the schedule. It's so that we can hold it at community centres. There's still some discussion on this particular one, so we'll keep our eyes open on that. Things can be changing on as you know, a regular basis on this particular situation. So certainly I'll let you know, but certainly virtual meetings will be ending.
As I understand it, John, members of the public will not be allowed to come in. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. If we were going to have our meeting at the centre, then we would go into Coombe Court, obviously, socially distanced, then some, each have a separate table, etc. But still, we really don't know how many people may or may not want to attend. And then we don't want to get involved with turning people away at the door, etc. So we might be looking at live streaming or whichever option might be available to us.
Well, we've been discussing this at Horsham, and there seemed, maybe they were overcomplicating it, but they were concerned that they hadn't got the right equipment to actually run a meeting. Now, admittedly, the officers have to come to the meetings, and I think it's a maximum of 30, is that right? And obviously with 7 or 8 officers in a planning meeting, for instance, it would be almost impossible. So they've been looking at other ways of doing it. So I don't know how we're going to overcome that if Horsham can't. Hazel.
The guidelines that I've got say that you can hold meetings, conferences in the hall, but you'd have to hold it with 50% of the people that you're allowed to have in there. So if we're allowed to have 300 in there, we could have 150, but we've worked it out. We could have 75 in the hall, social distanced. That's what we do for our film nights.
Really? Okay. Well, I'm not going to dispute that, Hazel, but that's not the information that I was getting from Horsham.
Because we're a community centre, you can hold it with 50% of your usual attendance.
Yeah, but not a meeting, as I understand it.
But it did say conferences and theatres and cinemas, etc. Could be held at 50%.
Well,
of your
I would
attendance.
agree. There doesn't seem any logic if you can have a cinema and then they turn around and say, well, you can't have a meeting. But I think we need to get clarity on that, because that isn't what they were discussing at Horsham only last week.
Yeah.
It was in the actual roadmap that was sent out from .gov.uk.
Okay. All right. John.
Yes, this rather illustrates where we are, Chair. Conflicting information is never helpful. So we are looking for further clarity. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Paul?
Well, just really long. Am I on? Yeah, just an observation, really, Chair. I mean, personally, I wouldn't go to a cinema. I don't care how many people are in it. I'm not prepared to risk my health in that way. And I feel much the same about these meetings. I'm perfectly happy to come to a huge room with just a few people in it. But if there's potentially a lot of people, I wouldn't be at all comfortable with that. And I really think we need to be looking very, very hard at our ability to live stream this. I mean, I think we've all watched live streaming of people like the South Down National Park Authority and stuff. It doesn't look to be that complicated to achieve, and it's really important that the public are involved. I mean, I think it's a great shame that we can't continue much as we are doing, but we can't. But I thought the Premises Committee had been looking into this a really long time ago, and I'm just a bit concerned that we're getting very close to the date on which we have to go live with whatever we're going to do, and you know, time is pressing.
Yeah, well, I agree with you, but this seems to be where the flexibility seems to be coming in, and we're getting confused reports back, as we've just had here from Horsham. And Horsham was saying, for instance, that they haven't got the ability to safeguard members of the public in any of their meetings because they can't open the windows sufficiently to be able to allow the air to come in for the numbers of people who could turn up. So I think what we do need to do is to have a look at how we are going to manage this, if we're going to do it at all, because I go along with Paul. I'm not prepared to sit in a meeting and risk my own health if it's not necessary. But the fact is, we can't do Zoom anymore after, I think it's May the 6th. So we've got no option. So we will have to be careful about how we do it. John.
Yeah, if I may, at this point, I think I've mentioned it in emails about the current situation anyway, and I will elaborate at full council next Tuesday evening, clearly, and hopefully there's more advice at that point. But if we are not being allowed to convene on the 17th of May, we do have to hold our meeting, but before we get at least halfway through May, we might have to convene full council in that first week of May whilst we can still virtually meet. Is a possibility, just to ensure that everyone is aware of that. We'd like to think
well, I think you have to
do that.
Well, I think you have to do it, whatever the date is. As I say, I think it's May the 6th, but you've got to do it before that.
That's right. Yeah, so it'd be 5th or 6th. We're looking at provisioning. I've discussed with Joanna and Chris on this idea. So yeah, that's a possibility.
I'd certainly like to get that done if we could. Okay, we're going to discuss the internal auditor's letter later anyway, and the reserves we've already had a discussion about. And as I said, John and I have already discussed that and presented it here in the papers. So I think if we can move on then really to 6.6, which is the monthly SIL report, John.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, just briefly. I didn't know we have to discuss and agree recommendations. Did we want to?
Oh, sorry, apologies.
To do that.
Oh, right, okay. Right, so can I propose therefore that we agree the recommendations from recently convened budget working party? Can I have a seconder for that, please?
Well, Chair, could I speak rather than second?
Yeah.
Well, the discussions that we've had tonight, I thought, in almost every case, have superseded what is stated in this document that sets out the various or at least the notes from the F&G. I'm not sure what the recommendations are. We're referring to the recommendations in that document. And furthermore, I'd like to just express a note of protest, because it seems that the working party did discuss all 5 topics, and yet the email I got on the 9th of March said, having spoken with Tim, we have agreed to proceed with items 1 to 3 at Thursday's working party. So having been told that you were only going to discuss 3 items, I didn't attend, because I thought item 1, the budget, sorry, the what do you call it? The business plan didn't seem to me to be a pressing matter. Item 2, I'd spoken out many times that I thought the provision of laptops was unnecessary. So that only left item 3, which was prioritising of projects. And I said that the same point I've made tonight. I said that I couldn't see how that could properly be done unless we knew what funds were potentially available. And those figures weren't available to the meeting. So I'm objecting to the fact that the working party then went on to discuss items 4 and 5. And as I say, in addition, everything we've discussed tonight suggests to me that all those recommendations really need to be put back, because they've been overtaken by events.
Well, that's the whole point of the proposal. If you feel that that is what should happen, then please put forward an amendment.
Well, I'm sort of discussing it first, or trying to discuss it first, get the mood of the meeting, because, you know, for example, we're trying, as proposed, you've got all this project funding with things put into priority categories, etc.
Yeah, which is precisely. Sorry, Paul, to cut across you, but that's what we have discussed this evening. And as Steve's pointed out, there is no rush for us to go ahead and do these until we know the exact end of year underspend. So if you wish to put forward an amendment, I think it would probably gain some acceptability.
Well, I guess my amendment would be to say that the recommendations of the working party be put back for further discussion at future meetings when further information is available. Does that?
Okay. Yes, I'm happy with that.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Because
all those in favour of Paul's amendment?
Unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you for doing that, John. I forgot about that. Okay, 6.6, receive the monthly SIL report.
Yes, this was just to receive. It's not to discuss and agree necessarily. Okay. And you'll notice that there's very little change from the previous month. There's no change to figures, just in terms of when it was reported, which is March.
Well, all of this will become pertinent with any discussions that we have in the next few weeks over the expenditure anyway.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, let us move on then. 6.7, discuss and agree the advice and solicitor concerning the SPC payment obligations regards to the Steyning swimming pool. What I'm going to propose here, I think, is where are we? There we are. Is that we put together a working party to discuss and come back with any recommendations for this. So, because either we've got an option here, as he said, we just got to suck it up, I suppose, and pay it. Or we've got to find another way in which perhaps we can discuss with them possibilities of how we improve the availability of the facilities to people within Steyning. Because I, for one, when my grandchildren were younger and wanted to, and came over here for 2 or 3 weeks in the summer from Italy, they wanted to go and swim, and I could never find a time that was suitable for them to go up and swim. So I have particular angst with it, if I'm honest, because I don't believe that it is a facility that is for everybody and freely available. And it always seemed to be a little bit confused about, no, sorry, that's not true. The times that we were given were very rigid, and you couldn't move beyond those times. So it wasn't like going down to the old King Alfred or wherever, where you could just go in and you pay and you go and have a swim. And everywhere I've been around the country with younger children, we've always gone into these local facilities, just like ours, a lot better in some ways than ours, with waterfalls and all sorts of things going on. And we could just roll up and pay. But here we just don't seem to be able to do it. It seems to be completely controlled by the school. So I do have my issues with it, and I just think we should discuss it in a little bit more depth rather than perhaps do it here. Rodney.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tim, especially with the good old King Alfred. God, we've had a few.
Well, it's a long time ago, I have to be honest.
Oh, yes, yeah.
So can I suggest that we have an all member working party? If you can turn up, you can turn up. If you can't, well, you can't. But I'd just like to sort of discuss this, and there may be some other things on here that will come to working party. We can combine them together. Okay. Is everybody happy? Happy to do that? Rather than agree, the advice now is that we form the working party and then we can come back to this committee at the next meeting. I'm stunned by your silence. Okay.
Hand from
Chris.
Chris, Chair.
Well, I'll
Chris.
agree with
I'll
you, Tim.
second that. I think that's a good idea, Tim.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll propose that then. Are you seconding it, Chris? Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Rodney, you're seconding it,
Yeah,
aren't you?
I'll second it. Yeah.
Okay. All those in favour then of forming a working party, coming back to the next F&GP meeting.
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Right, 6.8. Yeah, well, this is a little bit worrying. John, sorry, everybody knows the issue with Mr. Picking not being able to open and close, or wanting to stop opening and closing the public toilets. And John, I think you were discussing this with Jack Lee, weren't you? So can you update us on that, please?
Yes, thank you. I did send out an email today because we've had several discussions in the last few days with potential new people. But in the first instance, we had that discussion with Jack. Initially, he was, in agreement on wanting to go ahead because it made a lot of sense. Certainly in the morning, it made a lot of sense because he was there already. What he then reconsidered was his requirement, having spent most of the morning into, late morning dealing with what he was doing, to then have to commit to every evening as well to come back to the high street. So he's actually declined now. Since that time, and knowing that we had a timescale involved, we have been asking around, and we do have 2 other residents who have come forward. And we plan, therefore, to trial with one of those residents, if you're in agreement with this, for a 3-month period to see how it goes. Now, it might be that that's morning and evening, so opening up and lockdown, or it might well be that we have the morning covered by altering our cleaning regime. So it might just be lockdowns. So what we want to do, and this is what we did with Mr. Picking as well, was just a 3-month trial to make sure that it would work okay. So we want to do that with one of the residents, and if it does work, then it does work from their point of view, then we obviously have a long-term solution. I will just say also, there is an alternative that we had discussed at premises committee before Mr. Picking got involved with this, so over a year ago, and that was that there are automatic door opening, closing, locking systems that can be on timers. They are quite expensive, but obviously after a fairly long period of time, they do pay back. They could be in the region of, say, £1,500, that sort of thing. but then that would be covered. The only issue there being that there's a maintenance situation, and you are rather reliant on mechanism rather than individuals. So we're looking at all options, but our thoughts and our suggestion was that we look to trial this one resident to see how it goes.
Okay. Well, John, what because I never quite understood with Brian, what was the fallback position if he couldn't, fell ill or whatever, and he couldn't close in the evening, for instance?
Well, the final fallback position is that we have caretakers available so that we could do that, but that wasn't in the first instance. Hazel probably can inform you of the detail.
He had a fallback friend doing it for him if he couldn't make it.
All right. Well, I think we need the same thing with this, with whoever is taking over. We need to be sure that we have got a fallback, same as we got with Jack with the road sweeping.
That's right.
Steve was next.
Two questions. First of all, what is the insurance situation with the resident doing this work? Is he covered by council insurance? And then the second question, I think it relates to this automatic system. John, I think if you say it's £1,500, if we're paying £6 a day, that's over £2,000 a year. So this thing pays back in less than a year. I would have thought that it's a no-brainer.
Well, I think it's a good point. Rodney.
I was going to say, I don't think we should try and go into the same track like we did with Brian, as a retired person doing it for a bit of what I call pocket money, because this is a problem. It's got to be done on a professional basis, I think, so that we know. And if this automatic locking, I think we should look into that as well. I know that has got drawbacks because obviously whoever locks up, I suppose, has a quick look to make sure that the loos are
are not occupied.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, they're clean. Otherwise,
right.
The caretaker in the morning when he comes, it might be after they've been opened. So
one of the issues that I heard from these automatic systems is, of course, is that people, particularly those who sleep rough, get into them right at the last minute, lock the door, then it automatically locks. They can still get out because there has to be a safety feature in it, and that's where they stay for the night, which is not an ideal thing for us. So no. I'm not against it. I'm not against it. I just think we need to know what the system is like and how we can put in the safety margins for it. Paul.
I was just curious as to, is there any reason why we don't use the caretakers to do the work?
John.
Yes, they don't want to do it. They don't want to. They work on social hours as it is, so they don't want to get involved in regularly just making a trip for hardly any money at all, because when all's said and done, it is a very small fee that we're talking about. And if we were to enlarge that, then it really questions, what we ought to be doing. So if we can put it towards one individual, but as I say, there are a lot of things involved here. If we can cover off the opening up in the morning successfully with change of schedules, then that does, cut the expenditure in half, Steve, and therefore the no-brainer scenario, is pays off after 2 years instead of one, and then we look at the other details. And as you rightly say, the main concern is the security issue, because people can become aware of how the system works, and we know there are a few sort of rough sleepers. We're aware of those, and they do rather hang in those sort of areas. So we're conscious of where we head in that situation.
Right. Paul?
Well, just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that the caretakers have a separate contract at whatever miserable rate poor old Brian Picking got. I was suggesting it was it could be part of their ordinary contract of employment. I don't know what rate of pay they get for that, but they don't moan about that hourly rate. And whether they're in the Steyning Centre or walking down the high street to the toilets and back doesn't seem to me, I mean, it's a matter of us as employers deciding whether we want it to fall within their duties, isn't it?
John.
Yeah, through your chair. Yes, those caretakers who are working on the evening, we want and need them to remain on site. So I understand what you're saying, Paul, and it would rather work if they're working already, but we ask them to remain on site for insurance purposes and to make sure that they are looking after the welfare of those customers. So it would have to be someone else coming in on an otherwise evening off to, just do that. And that's why they're not interested, to be honest.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Steve.
Yeah, I also asked a question about the insurance. I apologise.
Yeah.
I went straight on to another question.
Yeah. Insurance, John, I think they're covered by our general insurance, aren't they, when they're working on our behalf?
Yeah, absolutely. But good point, Steve. Thank you.
Yeah. Rodney.
Well, I was going to say, I know this is making it more complicated, but I think we should be closing the toilets at 9 o'clock in the summer. 6 o'clock in the summer, to me, is too early.
Yeah. Okay.
People, visitors in the town. I know it's more problems for us, but while we're talking about these things, I think we should just think, just in the summer.
Okay.
Maybe,
well, I think that's a valid point.
Yeah, maybe we should be looking at an outside contracting firm to do this. So I know it's money, but we won't have this kind of problem all the time. But there are different options.
Let's try this for the time being. I think it's a good suggestion, and John's obviously found a couple of people who are willing to do it. I'd like to know that there is a fallback position, and then perhaps, John, you could discuss with them closing it later at night. I suspect they probably won't be happy to do that because obviously it goes into their evenings, but at least it's worth us having a discussion with them. John.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, two good points actually raised. No, we wouldn't generally be happy with locking down later. That's not to say that we couldn't find someone who's happy with locking down later, but what we do know is that if we can lock at 6 o'clock, then it's much better in terms of the general sort of situation around the bus stop come towards 9 o'clock. There can be some drink influenced individuals that might want to play around a little bit more. People don't really want to put themselves in those situations. And also if they're going to have to get involved with part of their evening, then they want to get that part of their evening that they have to do every night done and dusted sooner rather than later. So that's one. The other good point was security firms. We have looked at this as well, just to get that message across. The likes of Securicor, Securitas, those who have, 2 individuals in the car that drive around and lock down facilities, that's a possibility. Or contractors who, if we were looking at, the final clean being a contractor who would then lock up afterwards. We've looked at all of these possibilities just so that you're aware of that.
Okay. Well, Paul, I'd like to try to finish this if I can.
Yeah, sure. Well, that was precisely why I had my hand up, to ask whether we'd ever got any figures for professional janitorial services who could do the lock-up as well. Have we got as far as figures, please, John?
Yeah, through you, Chair. I don't have them available to me now, but they were obviously a great deal more expensive than just asking a local resident to come and do that for us. And if we were looking at that versus other arrangements like lockable situations, then the lockable timed arrangement would come out far cheaper and far better, I think, as an option.
Okay.
But,
Well,
Sorry, just to make the final point that, of course, if we had the janitorial services, it wouldn't just be the cost of locking and unlocking that we've got to compare it with. It's the current cost of us paying the caretakers to clean, which works out at quite a high rate when the figures were given quite recently, when we were working out the cost of opening and cleaning several times a day.
which we're going to discuss in a second.
Right.
Okay. Well, look, what I propose, therefore, is that because this is pretty expedient now, because we haven't got any time, because I think Brian wants to finish really sooner rather than later. So I think we have to, at the moment, we can go along with the suggestion that John has come up with. So I propose that we delegate him to employ, I suppose, employ this person to open and close it at the times that we said, to discuss with him him or her, to discuss whether they will close it at 9 o'clock at night time during the summer months. And in the meantime, look at all the other options that are available with the cleaning companies who can also do the opening and closing, the possibility of electronic systems and so on. And hopefully, if you can bring that back to the next meeting, John, it would be quite useful. So that's my proposal. So can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Paul. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Right, next one is the street cleaning contract, which is 6.9. Okay, I'll just say one quick thing on this. I don't have any objection to this at all, to salary increase. My only thing would be that the emptying, and I know he has emptied bins of his own initiative because they got full. We would obviously pay him for anything that he does, but I think if we're going to formalise it, it should be on the basis that he consults with the clerk. So that's the only observation I would make with this. Anybody else want to make any comments? Rodney.
Well, I mean, Jack consulted with me, and I did let everyone know, and that was purely because it was Good Friday.
Yeah, no, it's fine. It's not I'm talking about the future.
To Hazel, and I think that he does contact Hazel, so. Okay. But it was Good Friday, and because of the Easter holiday.
Yeah, so. No, it wasn't a criticism at all. It's just that for the future we need to get some sort of protocol put down so that he clearly understands it. So unless anybody really wants to discuss more of that, can I propose therefore that we do as proposed, that we pass a vote of thanks to our contractor Jack Lee for using his initiative and taking pride in his work, and so undertaking extra emptying of all bins on the MPF, even though he had no assurance he would be paid, to retrospectively authorise payment for the extra work undertaken, and to discuss, we discussed that with extra emptying bins should be authorised. So can I propose therefore that we go with item 1 and 2 on the proposed motion, and that on item 3, all the bin emptying should be with consultation with the clerk. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thanks, Steve. And all those in favour? Thank you very much.
That's unanimous. Chair.
Yeah.
Chair. It was just the first bit of the briefing note, just one thing that you missed out. That
sorry.
The request for the extra £25 a month.
Right. Fine. Okay. Can I propose? So I make an additional proposal then in that case that we about £25 a month. Okay. That we agree to the additional £25 per month payment to Jack Lee. That's all I need to say, I think. Steve, are you seconding that?
No, Chair, can I just suggest that there needs to be a commencement date?
Okay.
It would be, I presume, the first anniversary of the contract.
Right. John, did Jack give any ideas to when he'd like it to start? Hazel?
He did say from the 1st of April as
Okay,
per the start of his contract.
fine. Okay. Well, in that case, then let's we will do as Paul suggested. Then that will start as from the 1st of April.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Seconder, Steve, you said seconding it. Thank you very much. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, where are we? Yeah, 6:10.
Hold on, Tim, because
Sorry.
I did propose about the doing a separate litter.
Oh,
bin.
sorry. Yeah.
But I noticed the old blanket has gone from the hedge. I don't know who's done it, and also whether we should increase the emptying of the bins. I mean, they're only emptied 3 days a week. You know,
Well-
once by Horsham and twice by our contractor.
Yeah, but we didn't have a lot of problems last year, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, but no, but we had more than 3 collections a week in the summer, Tim.
Not
No,
last year we didn't.
not last year when Jack first started doing it.
Oh, right,
So
okay.
I'm loath to do it until we feel it's a problem. And I think with the end of the lockdown, I'm sure a lot of people who've suddenly taken to walking and so on will probably continue to do so. But I suspect a lot of that pressure will be taken off the MPF. So.
No, I don't agree, Tim. I'm not being funny, but the trouble is, I think this particular year, it's the youngsters. Last year, the year group were quite good, but this year they seem to be an untidy lot. But you know, we'll suck it and see. You know,
well, that would be my feeling, John.
Yes, thank you. Agree with, I think, just about everything that's been said. What we were going to suggest was that certainly for the bank holidays, we ask that Jack completes an extra empty, because it generally happens that way. And then I think, yes, to keep a close eye and look how it goes. We can always come back to this.
Okay, all right. So is that the proposal, therefore, that we ask him to increase it to, when you say over the bank holiday weekends, what, to do one every day, or what is the?
No, an additional one immediately following
additional.
that.
Okay. Yeah. So that we ask Jack to do an additional litter pick after the bank holiday. Yeah? Okay. Can I second, Deborah? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair. It was just a thought that whether we might, unless it's not necessary, we might delegate the office to authorise such ad hoc bin empties as might be necessary. Because, for example, I heard from a member of the public that there was an awful lot of litter out on the MPF recently, and they'd had to clear up. And it would be good if it's needed, if the office is authorised to just say to Jack, go ahead and do an extra empty, please.
Well, that's what
back to committee, but maybe that's already there.
No, Paul, that's what we've just discussed. So he can do the extra bin emptying in consultation with the clerk's office. So if he off his own initiative, he goes around and finds that he needs to empty the bins, he can talk to John, and John will give him the permission to go ahead and do it.
Well, I think that was my point, Chair, that we've discussed it, but we haven't got a motion to that effect unless it already falls within the clerk's delegated authority.
Yeah, I think that's what we did, didn't we? Am I not right, John?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was in the motion. It was in the
Yes,
motion.
I thought so.
Oh, sorry, I must have.
Go. No,
I do beg your pardon. I must have lost concentration.
No, it's all right. It's all right. I can understand. It all buzzes around all over the place. Okay, right. Have we voted on this one now? I've lost my train of thought now.
No.
No? Okay, so
Oh, yeah.
I'm proposing that. Deborah seconded. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Unanimous, thank you.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. Right, so discuss and agree reduction from 3 to 2 cleans per day in the high street toilets. Well, obviously with the ending of COVID, it's a little less necessity, but I have to be honest, I don't use the public toilets much, but the 3 or 4 times I have used them recently, I haven't been overly impressed with their condition. Now I know that's not necessarily down obviously to the cleaners. Cleaners go in and do it, and 10 minutes later somebody can come in and throw wet paper all over the place and do other things. So I'm sort of rather loath to say that we reduce the numbers, but I don't know what other members think. Does anybody want to speak on it?
Yeah.
Rodney?
Well, I think it should carry on as it is at the moment. It's summertime. You know, we are a visitor and tourism town. You know, and you know, the toilets are something that.
No, I agree. I agree.
You know, and so.
No, I agree entirely. Deborah?
That's what I was going to say. I
Okay.
didn't want to mute myself again, having not.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, then in that case, can I propose that we don't reduce the cleans to 2 per day, but we leave it at 3 until sometime in the future when the committee can bring this up from time to time?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Rodney. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay.
It wasn't quite unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Chair, it wasn't quite unanimous.
Oh, was it not? Oh, sorry. Anybody against it? Abstaining?
Only because I wasn't in the room for part of it.
Oh, okay, fine. All righty. Sorry about that, Joanna. I don't see everybody on my thing here. So, right. Okay. Move 611. Discuss agree the payment and affiliation to Wassock and Knock service providers. This has come down by about £100 for the year, which I think everybody's seen the invoice. Rodney, do you want to talk on it?
Well, I was only just going to say that this WSELC, you know,
Yeah.
I think that the last we knew about this, I think Joanna and John were going to go to a meeting to sort things out.
Mm-hmm.
So has there been new agreements then? You know, I see it's now WSELC, whereas before it was SSELC or SSELC.
Yeah, well, they've done all this change around, so.
Right, okay. And are there any, is there any paperwork that is floating around at all? Because,
For what?
well, you know, well, if it's a new organisation,
Right.
or a different organisation, there might be different things, you know, that are different to what SELC was. And you know that the idea, you know, that Joanna and John did go to the meeting, and yet we haven't had any indication of what's come out of that meeting.
Right.
The first thing we know is that we've got this.
Yes, we got the invoice. Well,
Yeah. And
I
I'm
have
not
to say,
querying that, but you know, it'd be nice to have the
Okay.
the history as well.
all right.
And
Hazel, did you want to comment on it?
Yeah, when John and Joanna went to the meeting, they were still right up in the air. I went to the latest meeting and I have actually sent out, I know it was today, but I did send it out this afternoon, what came out of the WSELC meeting, what they've changed. There's a new website and how they propose to run it. It did come out by email this afternoon. I went to the meeting last week on one of my leave days.
Right. John, would it be the end of the world if we defer the payment of this until we've had a chance to have a look at that? So at the next meeting.
Can it be done at parish council, because I think they had a limit to when we needed to pay it.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
Well, if we can,
but if they've only just sent it out today, Hazel, you know,
Yeah,
No, it came
I
out.
did say I'm sorry it was come out today. I have only sent it today, yes.
no, you've only received it today, and you
No,
No,
I went
no.
to the meeting and I wrote the notes from the meeting and I sent them today.
It's actually due. It's due by the 29th of April.
So we could agree it perhaps at full council maybe.
Well, we could speak to WASAC and explained what had happened. We haven't seen any papers, and therefore we're asking them to defer it for another month. I don't see how they would object to that, but John.
Yeah, we do actually have an item on full council where I was going to explain in more detail our position. It's actually 8.1 on next Tuesday's agenda to discuss and agree SPC position with regards to SASALC and WASALC. So we could effectively defer this until then, because we'll be discussing the position. And if you feel happy that we agree this at that time, then it's already on the agenda.
Well, we shouldn't really be paying an invoice prior to us discussing it at council. So I would suggest that we just defer it till then. Paul.
I just wanted to ask, through you, Chair, for John to provide a full briefing paper about this, because I only discovered that this had happened when I emailed Trevor Lego, and the email bounced back about 2 weeks ago. So I phoned him and he explained some of what had gone on. And I've looked at the minutes, or I can't remember whether it was West Sussex or South minutes, but either way, there's a record that Trevor Lego was writing to all parish clerks, I think at the beginning of March, setting out all the circumstances. So there should, I think, be a full explanation from Trevor Lego, which went, I believe, with the expectation that councillors would be informed of what was going on. And so it'd be really useful for all of us to see that in advance of the full council meeting where we're going to discuss this.
No, I agree. Yeah. John, can you make sure that we get that through? And you send it round with any other comments?
Yes.
Deborah, you're muted.
Yeah. Well, I know that I've read something from Trevor Lego. Now, whether I went online or not and found it, which seems unlikely because I have such difficulty. So maybe something was sent round from Horsham, or I don't know. I seem to have remembered something.
Okay, John.
Yes, through you, Chair, he put forward his position as to what he thought that he could offer. It wasn't established at that point that that's what WASALC would be, or that he would be part of it. Things have changed quite dramatically in the last 8 to 10 week period. And as Hazel said, you know, this meeting on the 15th of April, there were 57 parish councils at that meeting, most of them in our situation, really not knowing which way to go and not absolutely certain as to the assurances that were given. So yeah, we can elaborate and increase.
Okay. If you can elaborate, because we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. We're going to defer it until the defer it to the council meeting, and obviously we can't discuss it there if we don't have the full briefing papers. Okay, we don't need to propose that or anything.
No, it's on the agenda already. We can.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Discuss, agree, accept the internal auditor letter as per the working party. As I put in the working party notes, the internal auditor's letter contained one recommendation to increase the fidelity insurance, which has been actioned. There were issues brought up by Paul, which we didn't believe were relevant for the F&G committee signing off the audit. And this recommendation will go forward to F&GP, which is what we're doing tonight. But the queries raised by Paul will be dealt with by the clerk and myself when we can get together and time allows us to do it. So that is what we is the recommendation from the working party. Paul.
Well, Chair, I've already made the observation that this working party met and discussed that, having told me at least, well, no, told all of us that this wasn't going to be discussed. So it was so I wasn't even there to add my two pennyworth when the working party met. So it seems very odd to me that this has been outstanding right since, well, it's in the 14th December, 20 minutes. I set out the problems. We were invited to confirm them in writing. I've confirmed them in writing. We were going to have a discussion at a working party, but not that working party, apparently. And now it sounds very much to me as though it's being kicked into the long grass. So with the intention that this be accepted, and then the objections just disappear. I mean, there were 10 quite serious objections. And I just feel that they need to be adequately discussed, and that's just not happening.
Well, as I said, the only recommendation that came from the internal auditor was to increase the fidelity insurance. He didn't raise any other questions. You have raised them, and I'm quite happy that we respond to those. But for the purposes of this meeting, we have to agree the internal auditor's letter and the recommendation, which is to increase the insurance. So that's what I'm proposing. Steve, you're on mute.
Yeah, it said I could press the space bar and unmute, but it didn't work. I'll second the proposal. Okay. So can I have those in favour that we agree the internal auditor letter? We have increased the fidelity insurance, which has been actioned, and that following this agreement that the clerk and myself will put together a response to Paul's questions. That's been seconded.
Well,
can I have all those?
Can I just propose a minor amendment to that proposal, i.e. to put a reasonable time limit on when that might be done, please, Chair? I mean, I don't want to pin you to the wall, obviously, but it would be good to have some sort of indication of when it will be done.
Well, I'm very happy to do it as soon as I can, but I'm not going to go into the office and to sit there for at least another 3 or 4 weeks, because I'm going to get my second jab, and obviously I don't want to put myself at any risk. But I would say not this meeting, but certainly the meeting, sorry, not the May meeting, but let's say June, I can have that done.
Thank you very much. So if that is in the motion, I'd be very happy to vote for it.
So can we add that to the motion then, that this will be done by the June F&GP committee meeting?
Yeah, second.
Thank you. All those in favour?
Unanimous.
All those against?
No, unanimous, I think.
No, it's not. I'm abstaining.
No, it's not. Rodney, I can see him.
I thought your arm was up, sorry.
No.
Are you abstaining or voting against, Rodney?
No, abstaining.
Okay.
Sorry, Rodney.
Thank you.
Okay, right. Christmas tree decoration 6.13. Can I make a quick suggestion here, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because we have talked about it before. As I say, we've set up a working party under 6.7 to discuss the swimming pool. I suggest that we bring this into that same working party and come back to the committee to discuss costs and those sorts of things, because obviously we've had some prices in from the business chamber, and also some very good pictures of what the lights might look like in Steyning High Street when it was snowing, which is quite nice to see. So I just think that it would be better if we discuss this in a working party, bring it back to the next committee meeting. Paul.
Well, Chair, I do agree with that, but I'd like please to suggest that it's a bit broader than just to discuss that it's to discuss the prioritisation of projects, because if we take this one in isolation, which is going to cost something like £20,000 over a 3-year period, compared with the allotment water supply, which is, we don't know yet, but maybe £10,000 for a 50-year investment, you know, we're back to this same position that we need a working party to discuss the prioritisation of projects as a whole, not picking one which would then potentially prejudice the others.
And we need to know how much money we've got in the pot as well.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah, I mean, we can't do this until we do know the final figures. I think there's an issue here in the sense that this is an important thing for the town. It's part of Christmas. We've never, in the last 2 or 3 years, the lighting has been very inadequate. We would like, sorry, not we, I think it would be, in my opinion, very good for the well-being of the town, particularly as we come out of lockdown, and I hope we won't be back into it by then, to have some really good Christmas decorations up, and very good for tourism and so on. So yeah, I agree that we should discuss it also with other things, but as I say, we will be prioritising out of the projects that we've got. So we'll have to prioritise, and we can't do them all. But I'm quite happy if we want to, at the same working party, discuss the prioritising of the projects. I don't have an objection to that. Does anybody else want to comment on that?
Fine.
Rodney.
Well, no, I was going to say I agree with you that I think it'd be a good PR, you know, to have a new set of lights. But you know, I think it's got to be done overall as well.
Okay,
you know, I'm 100% behind having that, but you know, let's get it done in a proper professional way.
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that I wouldn't disagree with a single word you said, Chair. I mean, the Christmas lights are very important, but we do need to make a prioritisation decision along with the information relating to all the other projects.
All right. Well, shall I propose then, therefore, that at the working party that we've set...
Oh, John, I think John wants...
Sorry, John.
Sorry to disrupt in a way, and I don't disagree with anything that's been said. It's just that this particular project is something that has been done by you know, someone else, business chamber and others, and if we were to convene without their input, I'm just wondering if perhaps there was an ability to have some discussions before, or at least an indication as to precisely where the business chamber, Steyning District Partnership, whomever stood on this, so that we can bring that to the working party.
John, if I can interrupt you, I don't see any issue with the working party having a live feed. If it's going to be in person, then we can ask Dean to actually come to the meeting and to put his proposal to us. So I think that would be a good thing. If we're still doing it by Zoom, I assume there'd be no objection under government regulations for working party meetings to be done by Zoom, because they're not public meetings. So, Paul.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to observe exactly the same argument applies to the working party that was set up, including the allotment folk, to deal with the water supply. So, I mean, either we have loads of people along, or we say, well, actually, we've got the figures. We know what the budget is. It's a question of, actually, well, hopefully we'll know the budget for the water. We know the budget for the Christmas lights. So do we want lobbying on top? I mean, if we do, that's fine. But, you know, we've got to be fair about this and allow anybody who wants to lobby for a particular prioritisation project to come along.
I don't see a problem with either way. We can either do it as a working party and just discuss it. We've got the figures, as Paul rightly says, or we can invite the people along. But John, you seem to feel that the business chamber would be a bit...
Well, through your chair. Yeah, before you were putting your proposal together, your motion together, I just didn't want to unnecessarily exclude anyone without it being discussed. I don't mind either which way, whichever way you want to go. I would say though that the Christmas decorations is a slightly different situation. Most of the other projects, you know, are driven by us, and historically, you know, what we have here is a situation where they're being dealt with by the business chamber, and they are and have been. I'm sure Deborah will correct me if I'm wrong, but they have been saying, look, we need you to take it over. That's fair enough, but I didn't necessarily want to exclude them.
Well, I quite like the idea of them, of any of the groups that we're talking about the projects, to come and make a proposition, make a what's the word? Not a proposal. Anyway, I think
presentation.
Well done. Yeah, thank you. Presentation. I think that's quite a nice idea, because I think it shows involvement. So, can I propose that that's what we do? We take it to the working party, that we've convened for the swimming pool. We'll discuss all the projects, and between now and when we set the working party up, we will discuss by email which groups we feel should come and make a presentation. Certainly the allotments, certainly the business chamber, and I can't think of what other projects are on. Do we really need anybody else in the other projects? But we can discuss that by email. Then we can come up with, and then John, also for that meeting, we will need from you the full figures, the end of year figures, what the underspend is, what we've got to spend, and so on. Hello?
Yes, yeah,
John,
sorry.
okay,
Yeah.
all right. Rodney?
No, I was only going to say, I'm just having a quick look at these figures. It doesn't say whether the prices include or exclude VAT. So I think it's something important that we find that out before we go have our working party.
I agree.
Talking about, pensions and pence. And also the other thing which I'm not quite clear on, and maybe John can answer, the installation cost, does that actually include like the installation to the electrical supply? Is it the installation of the lights to the lamppost, but does it include the actual cost of plumbing in to our electricity supply, which is in the lamppost? Yeah, I know it's only a small thing, but it could be.
Yeah, well, I think we need to have all of those figures to hand.
So that,
I agree. Deborah?
No, I was just going to explain it, but we're going to have them all to hand. It doesn't matter.
No, let's put it all. Let's put it all.
Okay,
all
yeah, I was
together.
only bringing it up rather than wait until.
No, it's a good point. Okay, so the proposal is therefore that we put the Christmas decorations to the working party for the swimming pool, and we discuss at the same time all of the projects that have been prioritised on our list. And also we will agree as to which parties come to do presentations at that meeting. And John will provide all of the necessary end of year figures, how much money we've got to spend and so on. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Deborah, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for that. 614 is grant from Steyning Orchard. John, do you want to? John, can you lead with that?
Yes, yeah.
This should be a quick one, so can we?
You'll see my briefing note, which is brief.
Yes.
It's item 614. This is something that we deal with on an annual basis, that we've agreed on an annual basis. I say that because I think it is worthwhile in this instance, because obviously this group work with us, and the way that we assist them generally is with covering the insurance for this. Obviously covers the work that they do on our property.
No, I agree. I agree. So
yes, that's basically it.
I think it's well worthwhile. Unless anybody has objection, I'd like to go straight into the proposal, therefore, that we...
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, to discuss and agree the request for the grant from Steyning Orchard, Community Orchard, for the to cover the cost of the Zurich insurance extended cover.
Yeah.
Seconded by Rodney. All those in favour? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
6.15, request for support and grant for Jubilee celebrations. Now, I don't necessarily, because we've still got quite a bit to go through, I don't think this is quite a long time away. John, sorry, did you want to come in quickly on this?
Yes, I have had correspondence since this initial request, because it is non-specific. It was really, I think, getting the message out that, you know, firstly, that this event is happening. Secondly, that, you know, there will be a hope that there will be support from this council, monetarily and maybe in other respects too. What I would suggest is at some later date, I am sure that they will be putting forward a more specific request. So I would say at this point, it's just to get the message out that this is a hoped-for event. They're putting it together right now, and I would imagine that in the not too distant future, we'll get a more specific request, Chair.
Okay, so at this point, we don't need to do anything. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I would be saying.
All right, in that case, we can move on. Thank you for that report, John. Right, item 7, data protection, freedom of information. 7.1.
Yes, Chair. Yeah. So a little brief note for you. We convened an FOI panel on the 3rd of March, and I subsequently completed a reply to both residents and the Information Commissioner's Office in regards to their request that we reconsider a review response to a resident that was last made in June of last year. I wrote to the resident once again on the 9th of March. Part of that response was to reinforce what had been said previously, in that SPC, having published an email correspondence, did not hold and therefore could not disclose any further information as per the request. Also, as per agreement of the panel, I recorded our apologies to the resident in relation to the nature and tone of some of the previous SPC response in this matter. I must say that earlier this evening I checked the website just before the meeting and spotted this final response isn't there. It's not uploaded yet, so we'll deal with that tomorrow if we may. So that was that one, just to report back on.
Okay, right. And what you've just read out is the response that's going up on the website.
The response in detail, yes, will go up on the website.
Okay, and has that response been circulated to the members of this committee?
I'll do that anyway.
Okay, if you would, I think it's important. Yeah. Okay. Right, thank you very much. Item 8, Rodney, we've got your motions now, so can we move into those?
Yeah, no, I mean, what is my motion then?
Well, your motion is...
It was only to raise queries on the youth. Now, so that I'm not accused of anything, I'm not against the youth, but when the SAYS was set up, the school were a major part of the agreement. You know, St Cuthman's Hall was being used. That is evidently now not in operation. Yep. There was a conflicting, the parish's committee, their minutes were a bit conflicting because they said they were going to use, they will use the changing rooms. Now, John, I think, has come back and said, no, they're not going to, but the minutes actually say they are going to. Now, the thing is also the amount of Steyning youngsters, from the information that I've got, I think we should be asking a few questions. You know, why have the school stopped the youth using St Cuthman's? Because that was part of the agreement. Now, if they do go into the changing rooms, they are, you know, there's going to be a cost involved for us, you know, to clean it. And the other thing is, are we now getting value for money? We're talking about all these other things. I mean, it's £26,000 a year that we're paying, and it could, according to the minutes, I must admit, are not very clear. But it seems there might only be a handful of Steyning youngsters using this.
I think we're quite right to interrogate them. It's a lot of money each year. So I think you're absolutely right that we should ask the right questions. John, before I come to you, I'll ask Steve in case there's anything that he can then you can answer.
I must. I thought this was a requested motion, but I haven't heard a motion yet. This is not. It's not written as a motion. I'm wondering what the motion is.
Well, the motion is to discuss and agree. Sorry, to discuss any potential financial matters arising from the JPYC committee meeting on the 8th of February.
There isn't a particular motion, Steve, because it is to highlight it to councillors.
I think
so that we're aware.
There's an important but subtle difference between an agenda item and a motion.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm motion.
At the company.
Okay. Well, I think it's okay. Well, we haven't got to discuss and agree, I have to say. But anyway, look, I think it's worthy of discussion. I'm not too sure how we can take this on, whether we need to discuss this in a working party or whether we need to get more papers and more background and discuss it at our next meeting. John.
Thank you, Chair, through you. Yes, so the minutes that Rodney was highlighting, just for your information, it says under the Joint Parishes Youth Committee, point 7, service will return to Mondays at the Steyning changing rooms unless the Cuthman Centre is available again. And as I pointed out in response to Rodney's question, that hadn't happened and it didn't appear that it was going to. Obviously things changed as they have done these last few months. People can't meet indoors, so that didn't happen. Also, when they were looking at locations, it appears that they may have found a slightly better one, but obviously there still hasn't been any meetings indoors. They have had virtual meetings and they have met outside. So this is up for discussion. This meeting happened in February. We have another meeting planned. It was originally planned for the 10th, but obviously it being a committee, we might have to move that forward, dependent on situation, because we won't be able to do it virtually.
Right, John.
So we can deal with details then, I was going to say.
Yeah, okay. I think it's right that we should, on an annual basis, interrogate the whole process and the way in which this the youth service is run. And I've had concerns for some time as to whether there are the numbers of youngsters from Steyning. So I think what Rodney's proposing is actually right. It's just a matter of how we take it from here. Rodney, do you
well,
want
I was going to say, John is trying to. The minutes actually say, item 7, the service will return to Mondays at the Steyning changing rooms, unless the Cuthman Centre is available again. So, the point is, we've learned that the Cuthman Centre isn't available.
So where are they going?
Well, this is something that I think we should know. I mean, if they're not going to the changing rooms, but John has just said they have found another site in Steyning. So
okay, well, maybe what we John, gone.
Sorry, no, it was to confirm that there hasn't been. They haven't met anywhere because they can't meet indoors anywhere. That's been the problem. They have looked at a site, but they haven't used a site anywhere else, but they've looked at a number of different sites. It was felt that the changing rooms would possibly be a last chance because at least it would be warm, it has toilet facilities, but it isn't necessarily the best place to hold a a youth service.
No.
So, and unfortunately, as Rodney says, it's correct. Cuthman Centre hasn't been available for obvious reasons, but the school is now open, but they're not wanting to engage in community.
Cut across this because we keep going around in circles. Can I suggest that for our next F&G meeting, we ask a senior member representative of the youth service to come and to talk to us about specific things, and perhaps between now and then we can draw up a number of questions for her or him, and ask them to come before the committee and give us the responses. John.
Hazel was first.
Oh, go on, Hazel.
Well, we have a meeting with them already, don't we? Every 3 months. I think our next one's in May, isn't it, John? That we have a meeting. Why can the council not ask the questions and we take them through to the meeting rather than have the person come to F&GP?
Well, we have actually asked them in the. I did ask the questions for the last committee meeting in February.
I think. Well, I just think this is a lot of money we expend each year, and I actually think that they should come to this committee at least once a year to justify the expense that the public are paying for this. And we can give them a series of questions. We don't need them to be combative, but they're just questions that we need responses to. And I think it's a fair and reasonable thing for them to come here and do. It's not a quarter thing. All we want is for them to come and do a presentation on the group, what they're doing, how many people are involved, and all of those other issues, so that the public, because this will be reported, can be assured that the money that they're spending is being put to good use, particularly for the benefit of the youth of Steyning.
Yeah, I agree.
So that's my proposal, so that we ask them to come to the next meeting. John, you got your thing.
Oh,
thank you. It's all right. No, you can do that. John, are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, through Chair. I was just checking the scheme of delegation. Normally, what we have asked actually is for youth service members to present to full council. I didn't know whether we wanted that, because obviously we have representation at full council and we would be hearing that next Tuesday. So whether this is a full council rather than an F&GP.
Well, if that's, yeah. I don't mind it going to full council. We can propose that we defer it to full council, as long as we get a presentation and as long as they are prepared to respond to some of the questions that we may ask.
Yeah, absolutely.
So does anybody have any objection this goes to full council? Paul?
Sorry, can we just clarify which meeting that would likely be?
Well, I'm not sure we'll be able to get it to the next council meeting because it's not long away. But I'm quite happy to push it for that if we feel that it's necessary.
No, I don't think they would have time to adequately prepare or us prepare the questions.
No, exactly.
And then the next meeting is the annual meeting, which is just a hugely laborious admin one, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So we're looking to the June one, are we? Have we got a meeting in June?
And by then you will have had your meeting with them in May. Yeah, so we can then have that, formulate our questions and then have them in at the June meeting. That's a suggestion anyway.
Yeah.
Yes, through you, Chair, that would work.
Okay.
Well, that was really what I was going to suggest as an amendment, Chair, or unless you want to just add it yourself, to just put that in as the meeting that it'll be referred to.
Yes. Okay. So we will add that to my proposal, that it will go. We'll defer this to the June full council meeting to give time for us to formulate the questions that we need responses to, and for the is it the clerk and deputy clerk go to this meeting?
Yes, it is at the moment.
It is, okay. For the deputy clerk and the clerk to go to the next JPYC meeting and to come back with a full report of that meeting. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Rodney. All those in favour?
Unanimous, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next one from Rodney is to discuss and agree whether SB should have a representative on the Steyning and District Partnership. Can I just deal with this? Because we have spoken to the partnership. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but their feeling is that if SBC come on board, then the other parishes will also have to come on board. And they will, quite rightly, will want to do the same. And what they don't want to do is to find that the partnership is subordinate to the council, if that's the right terminology. As it's a community-based project. So as Ian Alexander, I think, is already coming through as a councillor, I'm sure he'll be happy to report to the council anything that was relevant to any of the meetings. Also, as a district councillor, I can attend these meetings. I haven't been able to because it's clashed with other meetings for some time, but it is possible that I can do. And if I can't, then perhaps Bob Platt can, and he can report back. So there are some avenues in which we can get that reporting back. Anyway, any questions? Rodney.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that, I mean, obviously in the past, the partnership did actually obtain a lot of grants that parish councils couldn't get, but as a volunteer group, they managed to get money. I mean, we got money for the car park in the health centre. Richard Woodman did quite a bit going back many years. The signs, all of the things like that, and it's just we seem to be lacking that. But I mean, now Ian Alexander is a councillor, and I presume he's going to carry on as chairman. We have this link, because and that's the only reason I brought it up.
No, I think it's a good point. And I mean, they used to come to our council meetings on a regular basis. But for some reason they stopped coming. So I think it's a good thing that they come and report. No, sorry, don't report to us, but to give us a talk about the things that they're doing.
Yeah, see, but in the I was going to say the good old days, but in the past, the Beeding and Bramber were represented, and there was a lot of results came from it. I mean, we had the leaflets for the walks, all these different things that have come from it, because
no,
they managed to get money, which as a parish council we can't, and it's an avenue.
No, I would agree. I think it would be good for us to know what's going on. Joanna.
Well, I was just going to ask a question. I mean, have they asked us for a representative? Because if they haven't, then I'm not really sure why we're discussing it, because surely it's up to them to come to us and say we would like a representative or not.
No, excuse me, Joanna.
They know where we are. It's not up to us to barrel in and insist.
No, the reason why we're discussing it is that Rodney had it put on the agenda, so that's the reason. And as I say, we did speak to Ian about it, and I've reported what he said.
Yeah, and just to put Joanna right, this is going back many years. The parish council had representation on it. The two district councillors were on it. The county councillor were on it, Derek Deedman at the time, and they got results.
But Rodney, that's not my point. My point was it's a separate organisation from us, and if they haven't asked us for representation.
No, well, I'm just asking. I mean, why? Because we used to have the representation.
Yes, but
we used to hang people for stealing sheep. We don't do that anymore either.
Yeah, but the dynamics have changed considerably, I think. So that's the reason why, and it's just lapsed. Whether, and it's not just us; the others are not involved in it either. They form themselves into limited liability by guarantee company as well. It's got directors. It's the whole thing has changed. So,
yeah, but
I agree, Rodney. I agree with you in principle that it's good that they come to the council occasionally and tell us what they're doing and get us involved if they can. I think it's important to do so. Hazel.
I think they're still doing an extremely good job even without the parish council. They work really well.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they do. I was only raising it because we used to get a lot of money by them on grants, something that we as a parish council can't get.
No, it's true.
And so I'm not.
I was just going to say, I think the overall point is that it'd be really great to try and build relationships with them, and that Ian Alexander could be the perfect person to do that. And I think we just try and build as much as we can so that we're working as a partnership as much as we can.
Yes, I agree. Okay, let's move on. 9, the progress reports, John. We've got 15 minutes, so can you?
Yes, well,
speak through it.
Yeah, briefly. These are all ongoing. Not very much to add other than asset register. We've got to work on some details. Clerk outstanding list of actions, got to go to personnel committee. We've been dealing with a number of other things for personnel committee, but that's to go back there when we have an opportunity, which hopefully will be soon. Resident option to remain anonymous. We have actually discussed that at working party. That's to go to full council. Considered it for full council next Tuesday, but we've got a full agenda anyway. Total fixed assets amount to be amended.
Before we move on from that, is my memory completely at fault? Because I thought we'd actually discussed it at full council, and it had been agreed that residents could remain anonymous, but we wouldn't necessarily answer their question. Wasn't that what was decided?
Actually, that may well be true. Yes, I know that we discussed it. Yeah, actually, we did. So I'm sorry, actioned.
So I think that,
much better. Well done. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Total fixed assets. This amount we can't deal with until the end of the year finance. So that's going to happen, as I mentioned, end of May, June. HDC contacted. I have contacted. The lady involved terminology. You might recall this is attached to the SIL report and appendices. Actually, it raised a few other questions with regards to the fact that we haven't received SIL monies this financial year, and I wanted to check why that was. So I'm wanting to speak to her direct about a number of things, so I'll report back on that. And there's no issue as such, but I do want things clarified for us. And,
I think, John, sorry, John, just because we're going to be talking about projects and so on, it would be quite good to get that clarified before we have that meeting, working practices. So could you give that some priority?
Yes, through you, Chair. Yes, just to remind people that S106 monies are available for all the community.
Yeah.
But SIL monies should be, coming our way, and it's just working out the finer details. And yes, this would add to our tally, as it were, for this coming year. Right. So it is important to get that in ahead of that, and that SPC to investigate possibly establishing finance reserves policy. Well, that's on top of what you put forward, Tim, and what Paul had put forward previously. So I do want to discuss this as well as one or two other new or amended policies at working practices, and I'll come on to that at full council next Tuesday.
Okay, Paul.
Chair, just on point 9.7, it seems to me that very much links up with this earmarking and prioritisation of projects that we've got a working party to discuss anyway. So it may be too late to change that motion, but I think it would be really good if we could make sure that is part of the discussion of that working party. because it dictates whether or not, it dictates the amount of funds that are available for projects.
Yes, no, I would agree. That's why I asked John to get clarity on that, so that we can be absolutely sure that we've got every penny that we can possibly have to discuss as to what projects we're going to use them for. So
yeah, absolutely, Paul. That's why
okay.
we're bringing that together.
All right. Item 10, John, 10.1.
Yeah, just notification as to dates of the financial close down. So the Rialtas end of year will be actually May 27th, closely followed by the internal audit on the 4th of June.
May 27th. Okay.
And obviously for the internal audit, we had it that the chair of F&GP would be invited along. It is going to be a virtual one, but as in last year, obviously details. So you'll have that opportunity, Tim, to be there at the time when we're doing it.
Okay.
And 10.2, Horsham District Community Climate Fund. Application is now available. Did want to draw your attention to this. And the details, you'll see date, if you have read that, you'll see the dates for applications: open 5th of May, close 14th, open 5th of April, close 14th of May. I knew that we wouldn't be in a position to put forward an application for this, but there is money set aside over the year, and what will happen is that this is returned to probably late autumn, winter. And what I do want to do is to suggest a letter of intent this round and actually come back with a full proposal at that point. I'd like it actually to be discussed. I have mentioned this to the greening climate change group.
Okay.
And also with local organisations, and I have put the word around just to see if there was interest, just with the likes of Jeff and his greening group, Steyning for Trees. There are other organisations that we could partner up with to strengthen our application in terms of a possible pocket park, which then goes into community committee field, because that's the Chandler's Way.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that something we can put into the Chandler's Way?
Exactly. I mean, there are many things. There's opportunities here, is what I'm saying. So it was just to give you an idea that I'm just putting the word around, and then I'd like, get councillors' involvement and then see where we can take this.
Okay, right. Paul?
I'm not clear whether I know there's a series of these, but if you're granted one, does that prejudice your chances for a second? Because I'm just thinking maybe somebody like the Abbey Road group could get in a bid nice and early, before the 14th of July for, I don't know, the wildflower meadow they're trying to establish or something of that sort. Are they aware of this?
John?
Through your chair. Well, I was thinking of slightly bigger projects and bigger money. I understand what you're saying, Paul. Certainly, to establish a wildflower meadow at Abbey Road would require some monies, but I'm thinking slightly more, because we want to involve Chandler's Way, maybe a whole change of playground scenario, a very much landscaping. If that's one option, there's many to be discussed. This is a big project, but it could be a lot of money. Also, you're right. I wanted to avoid the prejudice in terms of applications situation, but with regard to our involvement, partnering with the existing greening group, as you remember, they won a £5,000 bid in this stream, which is why I would be suggesting that in partnership with them, because it's a very particular project, that would be, viable. In terms of your question, though, I'm not sure, if we can keep coming back and applying, but I rather suggest they will hopefully, spread the pot as wide as possible. Therefore, when we do make an application, we make it a good one, and for as much as possible the right reasons, is what I'm thinking.
Well, then we need to put a list of those projects that might be appropriate for here. We need to put those in another list. We need to discuss that. Perhaps that's a committee project.
Yes, Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was hoping that maybe the climate change working party could meet to discuss, because obviously it's going to be climate change orientated, this particular application. So then that they could discuss that sort of area.
Yeah. Okay. Deborah, did you want to say something? You had your hand raised a bit.
No, I was going to say more or less the same sort of things as John. I mean, I can see, well, I'm everything except the sustainable transport, which I don't know a lot about, but there's an awful lot of things there that appertain to the Steyning Centre, the allotments, the Abbey Road, the Chandler's Way. You know, we've got a good spread of everything.
Yeah. No, I agree. Okay. All right then. Rodney, is it a quickie?
Well, it is really, yeah, it's just that someone's contacted me because I think Mike Croker, who is on the 20 mile an hour.
Yes, the same as me, yeah.
Yeah, he's put something on Facebook, evidently, saying that he's a member of Steyning Parish Council on the Communities Committee.
Has he?
And they said, since when's he been on?
No.
I know.
Rodney, it's not on Facebook. He's produced. There is a leaflet which he makes reference to being on the communities.
No. Oh well, this person said it.
Yeah, I think they've got.
Facebook.
I think they've got.
I mean, I'm not on Facebook, so I wouldn't know.
I'm not either, and I would be surprised because Mike's a pretty straight.
I think it's a mistake.
So,
I mean, I'm sure it's done on purpose.
Okay, guys. Right, the next meeting then is the 15th of June. I wish you all well. Stay safe, and thank you for a productive meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Stay well.
Good night.
Good night.